Welcome to the 22nd episode of the Honor Society, covering all things Ring of Honor live in the Turnbuckle Tavern. I am the ace of the tavern, Ace Filled Retro, and as always, joined by my partner, so filled with honor, at Mullet.mania, Colton. What's up, dude?
What's going on, brother? Oh man, just kind of catch my breath after that episode of Ring of Honor Weekly TV. Man, it was a shorter episode than usual, but it was still jam packed full of action.
Yeah, not handcuffed by the limitations of television and all the things that go with it. So they were able to air it for an hour and a half, start early, end early, whatever they want to do, they do it. And we're kind of off our feet. I think when they had the main event starting, I think it was like 8:09 Eastern time. I'm like, oh God, you texted me. They're going to go a while with the METALIK match, but it wasn't long. It was a decent match. Of course, we'll get into it, but they weren't giving it an hour.
No, I saw it was 8:13 when I texted you. I'm like, holy shit, man, this is about to be almost a 50-minute match. Like they have not done this yet since they've come back to TV. So, but yeah, man, I like they keep us on our toes.
Yeah, and especially, and we talked about this on Wrestling Tonight, we are kind of in the aftermath of WrestleMania week, and the big honors, of course, building up towards Death Before Dishonor in July. So there's a lot on the table here for ROH, and of course, a lot of news to unpack and the remnants of what happened at Supercard of Honor. Of course, we're going to have to figure out where all these main titles go. There's some programs in place at this point, but it's a matter of, I'm not really sure what direction they're going for, and I think that's a good thing right now.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's nice to not be able to see. I mean, we've got a good while. July will be here before we know it, but there's plenty of weeks of TV leading up to that. So it's nice to see that, there's still some development left there. We don't know exactly what's going to happen because, I mean, there's nothing I hate more than basically having the entire storyline for a pay-per-view revealed to me 2 weeks after a show and then seeing the same storylines, the same matches recycled over and over week after week leading up to it.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll get into the weekly TV for this week, and that's why you guys are here. But we're going to get into the news of the week and dive through everything that covers ROH and the dirt sheets, because a lot of times everyone's talking about AEW, they talk about CM Punk, they talk about WWE, they talk about Logan Paul, but we got you covered, locked in for the ROH news. So let's get into the scoop. All right, the scoop here to give you all of your Ring of Honor news needs. And we're going to start with something that was on the table for a bit. You and I discussed the last few weeks about the current, 1/3 of the trios champions, the 6-man champions in ROH. Brian Cage will remain with AEW and ROH, according to a Fightful report this past Tuesday. So there was a handshake deal in place for Tony Khan and Brian Cage. And Brian Cage, apparently the agreement was getting done over the last few weeks. Around the same time, the creative process was started with the Embassy merging with Swerve Strickland's group, the Mogul Affiliates. So a lot of creative plans in place. He's retained the title. The Embassy getting, of course, a huge push on ROH television, but Brian Cage is going nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see that. That was my hope that he was going to stick around ROH, even though rumors were kind of pointing elsewhere. But glad to see he's sticking around. I think that the merger with Mogul Affiliates, now being Mogul Embassy, is interesting choice. I gotta say, I don't love the name Mogul Embassy, but if that means Parker Boudreaux and old Trench is gone, I'm totally fucking fine with that, man. So I definitely buy into Gates of Agony and Brian Cage being his heavies way more than I do those two goons. So also, I mean, seeing him pop up on AEW TV this week, Prince Nana and Brian Cage rolling around with Swerve.
Yeah.
I don't know. Kind of makes me think, you and I had mentioned this, a few weeks back, maybe they're thinking about merging the 6-man and the trios titles, which I don't think would be a bad idea. So yeah, be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I can see that having some legs, of course, because of the thin nature of the division. And it makes the most sense if you're going to have these events like we watched Battle of the Belts, where we saw the ROH tag titles on the line. There is an option to potentially have the trios titles just cross over and then let them live on ROH or vice versa and have them come and play at the big pay-per-views of the crossover events. But the thing with Brian Cage is we don't know the conversations had with WWE behind closed doors about what they offered him and what AEW offered to ultimately make him want to stay. In my opinion, I'm happy to see Brian Cage stay because I do like what he has to offer, especially to ROH. He feels like he could be a main guy, but I also like how they're booking him. I really enjoy what he brings. We mentioned it's like a guy like Dave Bautista given a Rey Mysterio moveset in a video game. And I'm a big fan of Brian Cage, and I think he has a lot to offer. And I think 38 years old is the new prime for pro wrestling. He's not even 40, and I think he has a lot to give.
Yeah, certainly, man. Yeah, you mentioned the Batista look with the luchador style moveset. His solo ring entrance music is even reminiscent of Batista's theme, man, which is kind of a cool nod. But yeah, I think Cage is great, man. I'm really glad to see. I know his first round with AEW, he was fumbled a little bit. I don't know if some of that had to do with some of the issues with his wife in the company. Who knows to say. We can only speculate on that for sure, but. Glad to see like this second pass that he's getting with Tony Khan Enterprises is going a lot better, and I think there's a lot of potential there. So both AEW and ROH. So I'm excited to stick it around.
So we hear about Brian Cage staying, and we have, of course, the top of the card filled with the program was CLAUDIO and Eddie Kingston, Supercard of Honor, the biggest show of the year. It looks like we're going to be without Eddie Kingston for a little bit because during this episode of Ring of Honor TV, we had Eddie Kingston revealing that he may be needing surgery to repair a hernia injury. Eddie Kingston said he suffered it during the ROH World Title match against the current champion Claudio Castagnoli in the main event of Supercard of Honor back on March 31st. Again, this was on the TV show. Eddie Kingston kind of elaborated on this, and he's been off of TV since this happened, so it makes sense that there is an injury they're working into it. Sort of a shame. He had some momentum behind him, and it seemed like he was going to get his rematch, but maybe it gives them a little time to put it on the back burner and then heat it up when they're ready again, maybe for Death Before Dishonor back in July.
Yeah, I hate to hear about Eddie being hurt. He said that he's been struggling with some sort of injury since September and didn't really know that it was a hernia until after, the Supercard of Honor match. That's doesn't surprise me. Like somebody that Eddie would ignore a nagging injury until it was just absolutely too late. So I hate to hear about a hernia. I know that shit's awful, and it's pretty. It's an invasive surgery. Definitely something you can come back with, but it's come back from it. It's going to put him on the shelf for a while. But honestly, I think it's probably better for the storyline, man. I was kind of interested to see like, all right, well, they built this really well leading up to Supercard of Honor. He lost. I was almost worried about it losing steam as far as because you kind of have to be really delicate with how you book the second chapter of that if you're going to go straight into it with the underdog losing. So I think this is maybe a blessing in disguise, like you said, that they'll be able to. It's not going to take any time to heat this back up when he's good and healthy and ready to come back, whatever it is.
Yeah, and if he's not ready by July, it's curious to think about what they would actually do for the world title picture, and I'm sure. At this point, there's some legacy there. We talked about a guy like Matt Taven, but we also talked about a guy like Dalton Castle, a former world champion himself. And he had an interview this past week, and he had talked about a lot of stuff. But most notably, he talked about his tryout with WWE with a podcast called WrestleJoy. And he talked about the early days of finding who his character is. And we all talk about what a natural he is and the charisma that he brings to the ring. But his quotes were interesting because he talked about being disrespected by WWE and the people that were looking at him and how he showed up and presented himself. And he said it was probably 2013 or 14. I started getting a lot more bookings and traveling on the road. I wasn't doing the act that you see today. I was still Dalton Castle. I was still a peacock, but I wasn't coming out in the jumpsuit with the boys. I had tassels and a lot of color, but I didn't really have a lot of direction. He continued talking about the 3-day tryout he had with FCW, including a promo day where he came in flip-flops because they were told to come dress in whatever they wanted. And he said, being young, I was on the radio at the time and I hated my job. And I got called down. At the time, I was like, this is it. This is everything I've been working for. I go down to WWE. I go to one of these 3-day tryouts at FCW. I felt like I was crushing it. I felt so good. Day 3 was promo day. They said, come as you want, come comfortable, come as you are. I wore flip-flops and went up and did my promo. And then he talks about getting chewed out by guys, legends that he was respected. So he said, they just dressed me down the second I stopped talking. They didn't say one positive thing about the way I talk. They just shit on me for wearing flip-flops. 7 men that I looked up to that I grew up watching and respecting, they were just running me down. I think the only person who didn't say something mean and was just kind of nice was Dusty Rhodes. That was something that's kind of nice. Man, Dalton Castle, I mean, to me, he is pro wrestling. He personifies what pro wrestling is. And you could really tell in this interview, and I heard the clip here, you felt that he was hurt by this, and it almost inspired him to go out there and prove everybody wrong by being who he is. And I think that's the best part about Dalton Castle in the presentation. He feels genuine, and him turned up to 11. We always hear about like Stone Cold, his character is him turned up to 11. It feels like Dalton Castle is the same thing.
Oh yeah, man. I think you hit the nail on the head. I agree. Like if you could just look up pro wrestling in a dictionary for somebody who's never looked at it before, having Dalton Castle there, a clip of him and his entrance and his in-ring work is the perfect definition of what it is to be the combination of athleticism and spectacle. Like, he's just fantastic. And I had no idea that he had tried out for WWE at any point in his career. So it was really interesting reading this story. But I can't say that surprises me at all, man. That fucking sucks that happened to him. I mean, like, I'm not surprised that Dusty was nice, because I mean, Dusty's known for being one of the nicest guys in the fucking business period ever. Like, it's, so I'm just really unfortunate. Also, not surprised. I know that that's kind of the mentality down there. It's we hear from other wrestlers, like, it's a pretty, it's either their way or the highway, and could be a pretty toxic setup. And I mean, I'm sure for the most part, like, don't tell people to come in whatever you want if you're just going to shit on them for coming in something casual. But yeah, definitely, I'll have to go back, and I did not listen to the clip. I just checked it out on the notes here. So yeah, I need to go back and catch that interview. I'd love to hear it from beginning to end.
Yeah, and got to remember the time frame. 2013, 2014 was a pre-AEW landscape, a monopolization of the wrestling world with WWE. So they made the rules. If you weren't working there, you weren't working the big time. And of course, TNA Impact was still a thing, but they were a distant second, nowhere near the production level that AEW has with the second option, which, again, we'll talk about in a second. There's another piece of news about this interview with a quote. I can't be more thankful for what Tony Khan has brought to the wrestling business, because he gives us second options, where a guy like Dalton Castle maybe is not WWE's cup of tea, or maybe he would become WWE's cup of tea because they're forced to, by competition, open their eyes and not just be stuck into what they're doing. Because go back to 2013, 2014, and people could be nostalgic about it all they want and talk about the Daniel Bryan moment at WrestleMania 30, but there was a lot of really bad, bland moments because they weren't being challenged both economically and intellectually. They weren't forced to make their best storytelling and put it on the screen. Because if you think about it, everyone talks about the Attitude Era. They talk about the Monday Night Wars. What is the common denominator with today and that period of time? There's two wrestling companies challenging each other to be better on a weekly basis.
Yeah, competition does nothing but make everybody's product better, or at least has the potential to. I'd still like to see WWE continue to improve a little bit with as much competition as they've got today versus back in 2013 or 2014. But yeah, I think it's a very telling of that time and that era. I mean, personally, like 2013, 2014, I took a pretty big break from wrestling around 2011. I wasn't watching anything in 2013, 2014. So yeah, it's I'm so rejuvenated now because it's not just AEW. Impact's at a higher level. You've got MLW, GCW, Ring of Honor's got weekly TV again. I mean, it's an incredible time to be a wrestling fan. There's no shortage of competition anywhere. Like, whatever you like, you're going to be able to find it somewhere.
And we talk about lifers in ROH. The one lifer that we've talked about is continuing his run through ROH is Christopher Daniels. And he spoke at WrestleZone ahead of his showdown with Shibata on last week's ROH TV, where he was challenging for the Pure Championship. And you and I were very complimentary of the match. I thought it was great. But during the interview, he talked about how he doesn't plan on stopping wrestling anytime soon. And that's always been a conversation where they always look at it and say, all right, when are we hanging it up? And Chris Daniels has no real reason to. And he talks about why he wants to continue being in ring. And he says he wants to do it until the wheels fall off. He says it's 100% selfish. I want to try and continue to perform as much as I can, and understanding that we've got such a full roster and TV time being limited, my opportunities won't always happen on AEW television. I recognize that. I understand it, and I'm not sad about that. I mean, I wish I could be on TV more often, but I understand why I'm not. So I want to continue to perform as much as I can. So I was doing a lot of stuff with Defy, doing stuff with Warrior. I just last night had a match in North Dakota. He talks about wrestling a guy named Kevin Koo, who's a very good young talent. And he said, these are the things I want to continue to do so I could still sort of scratch that performance itch. He doesn't want to 100% hang it up. And he's a guy that his legacy is already set in stone. He is, as far as legacy in the wrestling business, Christopher Daniels has pretty much done it all. I mean, you talk about being an entry-level developmental talent in WWF at the time. He did a lot in TNA. That's where he really honed his craft, but also the ROH stuff. Legendary pillar stuff that he brought to the table, and he still wants to do it, so why not?
Yeah, and to add to that resume, first ever AEW tag team champion with old Frankie Kazarian at SCU, man. Like, I don't blame it at all, man. And I mean, it's not like, you see some wrestlers in the twilight of their career, for lack of a better term, who, don't necessarily still have the chops to keep going. And they're still doing it because, people are going to give them the opportunity to, because they're legends. But like, man, Chris Daniels, he's not missing a beat. He's still in great shape. I've been very impressed with everything we've seen from him on ROH TV since it's been back. I mean, good on him, man. As long as I just hope that he can stay healthy and, he doesn't suffer any sort of injury. Like, I mean, I know that when he first had the issue with the eye bleed, I know he'd taken a lot of time off. That's kind of what stopped him from coming off AEW TV. So yeah. I'm really glad to see him back, man. And I think it's awesome that I think he has a lot to offer Ring of Honor product in and out of the ring, but it's really good to see him back and see him doing what he loves. And yeah, I'm here to watch it till his wheels come off, man.
Yeah, I love it as well. And I think he has so much to give. And it's interesting to me that he's not just willing to stay under the umbrella of AEW and ROH. He mentioned going to places and giving back to the independent talent, because that's where he was able to create his name. And I think he can see the grassroots version of wrestling still has a lot of longevity in it. And to give back to that, I think it's a beautiful thing and I appreciate it. But moving on to that Dalton Castle interview that we talked about, the WrestleJoy, he obviously talked about the time and trying out for WWE. He talked about a whole bunch of things, but I wanted to highlight how much gratitude he has for a guy like Tony Khan by launching a major alternative product. And he said, I think it might be clear with how much gratitude I have for him, not just in Ring of Honor, but wrestling. And with AEW existing, the world of pro wrestling is better. There are so many jobs and everyone gets to work and the fans get to watch a million things. So we'll get into that in a second, but there's a lot of toxicity on social media and wrestling fans at large about Tony Khan. And like, it feels like low hanging fruit when people want to make fun of Tony Khan for being eccentric or not being as camera savvy as a lot of people want to give. Like Vince McMahon was a natural as a character on screen. Tony Khan just doesn't have that knack, but what you can't take away from his passion for pro wrestling, his ability to want to make the wrestling world better. And I think he has done that. So for those AEW haters out there that just watch the product, and your WWE stand for WWE guys, and you're going to hate AEW no matter what they do. If they do 55K at Wembley, you're still going to say they didn't do 81. Like, no matter what, they're always going to be something that you rip them apart. So what you can do is thank Tony Khan, because WWE had to step up their storyline and storytelling with things like the Bloodline. They were able to force their hand and make them better because AEW existed. So thank Tony Khan for that.
Yeah, 100%, man. I don't think the Bloodline storyline would be anywhere near. I don't even know if we would have gotten Paul Heyman with Roman Reigns if Dynamite hadn't started coming and taking some I don't know if I'll go ahead and say taking viewership away, but throwing up some competitive numbers when they were going head to head with NXT. So, and yeah, man, I mean, sure, it's easy to take shots. I mean, that's what fans of wrestling do. We take shots at anybody and everybody. So, I get it. It's going to happen, but I thought it was cool that Dalton Castle gave him the nod, especially with, what he's done. And I think what we've seen from Ring of Honor so far since he's bought it, I mean, just shows, his dedication and the fact that he really is a fan and that he cares a lot about the lineage and the people who mean a lot to Ring of Honor. And he's bringing them in, a lot of familiar faces. Not everybody's got full-time jobs, but it seems like anybody that like wants a spot, wants to still be in the ring or still be around, or is getting that opportunity. And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, and Dalton Castle mentioned more about the ROH and Tony Khan thing. He says Tony Khan cares a lot about the lineage and people who mean a lot to Ring of Honor. He's bringing them in. There's a lot of familiar faces. Not everybody got full-time jobs, but they're still in the ring getting exposure and people watching them while also doing 4 of the shows plus whatever sports teams and things he's involved in. I don't know how he does it all, but I'm so happy to be watching it, participating in it, and benefited from it. This doesn't seem like it's just fall in line, corporate speak. This is a guy who recognizes that without Tony Khan, ROH would be a defunct brand, just under sort of a tab on the Peacock network where people can watch. If in an alternative universe, WWE purchased the library, the video library, and all the intellectual property of ROH, it could just be sitting next to the Evolve tab on the Peacock network. And to me, having it as a living, breathing reminder with the history behind it, and then adding new content on top of it, it makes it better. And I think it couldn't have fallen in better hands. And I think go down the list of what ROH became and what it was, you couldn't have found a better home with it with Tony Khan. And his intentions are true. No matter what, his intentions are always true.
Yeah, it was, and I don't think we even knew for sure when he bought it that we were going to get a new era or a new generation of weekly ROH TV. But I mean, I think there's no better person for the library and the history of it to be in anyone's hands other than Tony Khan's. And yeah, very, very happy with what he's doing and excited to see a lot more from Ring of Honor for hopefully years to come.
And I can't say like if I was in his shoes, if I'd be the one making daily content, because when I look at Ring of Honor, especially when you're working, doing what he does, and Dalton Castle mentioned it, we have Fulham, Jacksonville Jaguars, you also have real estate, and you also have obviously AEW. To me, ROH was just a padding the deal for like an HBO Max to get this streaming deal, to have history, because that's the one thing AEW doesn't have. And of course, they're growing with history every day, and they're having content, and they've had 4 years of pay-per-views at this point. They've had 4 years of Dynamites, but that's what is the selling point of someone buying the WWE intellectual property, is this long lineage of, since 1985, you have all these pay-per-views, and then you also own the libraries of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. You also WCW, WCCW, AWA. You own all these libraries, ECW. So you could sell all of that and build this big, giant, strong streaming platform with endless amounts of content. Now AEW takes on ROH, and they've had all this history that when they began in the early 2000s, now you also have their background, their library, and you also own the video library and all the hits of guys like Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. It exists under Tony Khan, and it's beautiful because it's kept in this nice little compact place where we know it's going to be taken care of, not just thrown on some streaming service and bastardized. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so cool that he's taken it on himself to do his own platform. We speculated that it might be hosted by HBO or Paramount or something, but the fact that it's Ring of Honor has its own app, it's its own platform, and it's not perfect. I mean, we're all still seeing issues with it, but you can tell that they're working on it and they're making it better. And I just think that speaks a lot to the way that the guy does business and the way that, the passion that he puts into his projects, that he took it upon himself, didn't just post it up on somebody else's platform and use somebody else's interface, that they're building it from the ground up, doing it themselves. It's really cool.
And the beautiful thing about AEW and ROH is we're continuing to add to the history on a weekly basis with all of these, Battle of the Belts and Rampages and Dynamites, and also the pay-per-views. And not to mention, we're going to get the ROH weekly TV. And then the Saturday show, what these networks want to see is content. And AEW is building it every week. So they're going to have, eventually they're going to be a promotion with a lot of history. And I think a couple of months ago, they had passed the longevity of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and everyone, and I love Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but everyone wants to wax poetic about it and their impact at wrestling. Of course, the people that came through those doors, legendary, but AEW has already surpassed them and supplanted their flag and has become bigger than they ever would have thought that they could be. So with that said, let's get into the ROH TV results. We definitely need a bumper for that. We got to tell Chad we need a bumper for like TV results or something to lead us in. But this week's edition of our ROH TV was taped before and after last week's Rampage taping Friday in Rhode Island. You texted me. No Nigel on the call. We had Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman. We have a whole bunch of ROH tapings done. We got some last night. This was done Friday at Battle of the Belts and Rampage. But now they're taping in bulk. And I know that they had taped, what was it, 5 weeks in bulk a while back, the original tapings. Now we have some breathing room for the editing. So it's not as, it was challenging that week for Supercard of Honor. They definitely could see there was a little rust on these guys. Like, I don't know how we're going to get it up on time.
For sure, and especially with them calling that audible and starting at 9 p.m. versus 7 p.m. that one night for the one they had to tape in California after Dynamite. So yeah, I'm glad to see them get a little bit of breathing room, get a little bulk recorded there. Yeah, definitely missed Nigel tonight, but I mean, like I said before, Caprice and Ian Riccaboni are my favorite two-man team in the business. So, definitely no disappointment from them handling it on their own tonight. So. Opening the card, we have Varsity Athletes coming out with Smart Mark, Ari Daivari versus Mark Briscoe. But this is the second week in a row, I think, that we've seen Varsity Athletes but not seen Trustbusters. So I'm wondering if maybe they're looking at not keeping both those stables going and just kind of leaning towards one or the other. Absolutely fine with me. I mean, I will say I enjoy Slim J in the ring. I think he's great. So I hope that doesn't mean that if we're moving away from the Trustbusters, we're not going to see him anymore, because very, very, very impressed with what that guy can do in the ring, especially for his size. But yeah, either way, I'm having my fill. I think it is probably time to pick one of the factions or not, because when we see both of them on TV, it's more than enough of Smart Mark and his boys for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we, of course, saw Mark Briscoe get the win, and they're trying to build him back up towards wherever they're going with him. If it's going to be another rematch with Samoa Joe for the TV title, or they're building him to do something different. But I did enjoy this match. And one thing I want to just kind of note, and I think we've seen it on every tapings, And I think that's why we also saw the delay in putting it on TV, is that they're recording these matches out of order, which they're just making it more challenging for themselves. And I'm not sure if they want to make sure the crowd is hot for certain parts of the show. They want main events to resonate a little bit better because Rampage crowd or Dynamite crowd might be more tired than not. So they're recording the main events in the middle of the show. But this match was actually the second match filmed in the taping, and they had the women's match taped first. So not sure what the rhyme or reason is, and maybe we'll get some more clarity on that. One of these, like maybe someone asked during the ROH TV scrums or pay-per-view scrums. But it is interesting to me. And do you have a take on that? Do you think there's a benefit for taping out of order?
I definitely think there is, man. I mean, I feel for the guys in post because I know it's more work for them to do it like that. But it's, I think there's definitely a benefit to it because, and I can say from experience because I've only been to one Dynamite where they did a Rampage taping afterwards, and like, don't get me wrong, it was a good card, but they taped everything in order, and like, man, the crowd was thinned out, and frankly, for the folks that stuck around, just fucking tired by the time the main event came around for Rampage. So I think it makes a lot of sense to, especially, tape your main event earlier on so the crowd's still kind of hot. You're getting them because you don't want to watch a match, you don't want to watch a world title match, Claudio versus METALIK, and the crowd's just down 20% and just, quiet. That's not what you want to see. So yeah, I think it, I never would have thought of it on my own. It's a pretty cool strategy, but yeah, I think it's, I think there's definitely some merit to the idea.
Yeah, and I wonder if we're going to start seeing it on Rampage, because I remember the Grand Slam taping that I was at when they did Rampage, and I remember poor Ricky Starks. I mean, he was in the main event against Hobbs, and the whole crowd just leveled out because it was supposed to be a lights out match. So they had pretty much the end of the show and they turned the lights off and everyone thought that the night was over. And then out comes Ricky Starks and people started rushing back to the floor. So on camera, it looks horrendous. Crowd is exhausted. They've expended all their energy. So I think there's something to it. And I feel bad, like you said, for the guys post-production, but they're getting paid the money. That's their one job. So I guess it's giving them something to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure Tony's paying them pretty well. I'm sure they're not hurting. So,
after this match, we had Mark Briscoe is outgunned by the Varsity Athletes, Ari Daivari, the Trustbusters, whatever you want to call them. Josh Woods, Mark Sterling, and Tony Nese were all at ringside, and they started laying the boots to Mark Briscoe. We had FTR coming out making the save. Nice little pop for them. Want to shout out FTR for putting Mark Briscoe's name on the AEW Championship belt. So classy act by the now 4-year signed to AEW FTR.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I always love seeing FTR on any program that show up. Really cool to see him on ROH TV again. Man, one thing I wanted to say about this match, too, is, Josh Woods and Tony Nese were putting the boots to Mark any chance they got the whole match. Anytime the ref, right, Mark would get the ref's attention. And props to those guys because they're smooth as fuck at doing it. Like, they just, as soon as the ref turns his head, they're they go right into laying a haymaker and then just walking off like nothing ever happened. So yeah, very cool to see FTR come out. I mean, it wouldn't hurt my feelings to see them get both promotions belts again and do another multi-belt run. Like I mean, we've seen it before, but it never gets old to me.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see what they do with the Lucha Brothers, and of course, sign me up for Lucha Brothers versus FTR. But I'd be okay with that match as well, but it looks like FTR will be otherwise occupied this summer if everything that they're saying today comes to fruition with this Elite versus CM Punk and FTR storyline. But it's fantastic. You have the tag titles involved, and man, go to the races. That's how you get 55, 60K at Wembley Stadium and people pumped up to buy those tickets.
Yeah, maybe even more, man. I feel like there's no other way to headline that card other than that option there. But
so next segment here, we have Eddie Kingston and what I mentioned in the news, and he was speaking for the first time since Supercard of Honor, and he was talking about the injuries he's been dealing with, the hernia injury since September, and he thinks he might require surgery, but this is not an excuse. He wants to make sure it's clear that he wasn't using this as an excuse for losing to Claudio. He said he had a strategy and abandoned it. He thought he was trying to fight the same way as everybody else wanted him to, not just sticking to his roots. Eddie admitted that Castagnoli was the better man, having beat Kingston so badly that he couldn't sleep that night. Eddie admitted that he wanted to quit wrestling like Castagnoli said he would before Supercard of Honor. And however, Eddie said he would learn from this loss and move forward. As we mentioned, if he is indeed as hurt as he is, which I do believe that is the case, they'll put him on the back burner. They'll do something different, have these challengers come up to Claudio. But I think big boss level, big event, Death Before Dishonor, or even after that, it's Eddie Kingston getting the title win over Claudio. That's always how the story should end.
Yeah, 100%. I really liked what Eddie said, where he's like, you either win or you learn. The only way that you lose is if you don't learn from it. And I really like that message. It was beautifully put, man. What Eddie's got a way with words always, but yeah, really liked the way that he put that. Thought it was a great promo. I thought it was really cool how he, gave Claudio his props, definitely showing his honor right there, no matter what Claudio says about his lack thereof. And yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I mentioned when we were talking about the news, I think it'll really, he'll be white hot whenever he comes back. There will be, you won't have to spend much time building because the crowd will be so excited to see his return. So, yeah, and I think, I think that with him being on the back shelf or on the back burner for a while, whether it's surgery or not, he's obviously going to have to take some time to recover. Because you don't want a hernia getting worse. I think that this, tells us that the belt's not coming off Claudio, because I think there's no better story than having Eddie take it off of him. So no matter who they throw at Claudio, I'm sure it's going to be some great matches. But I think the Swiss Cyborg, as they used to call him, is not giving up that belt anytime soon.
So we have this next match here. It's Sky Blue taking on Kelly Madden, and this was by all intents and purposes, a squash match. The announcers did put some work in for Kelly and talk about how her trainer was Damian Adams, who also trained ROH alumni Deonna Purrazzo. They got that in right before the end of the match, which was the Skyfall. So Sky Blue getting the win here, a decisive win. And again, we mentioned this the last time she was on our televisions for ROH. It's nice to see her on the winning side of things because she is a talented young female wrestler that gets overshadowed by the talent at the top of the card in AEW. And I think she really fits in this now blossoming women's division that is getting her every week.
Yeah, 100%. I think she, the Skyfall looked great tonight. I believe that makes her 3-0 in ROH. Is that correct?
Yeah, she is definitely undefeated if it's 3 or 4, but I'm pretty sure it's 3.
Right. And man, I thought, for all, like you said, all intents and purposes of squash, especially on time or on length of the match. But I thought that Kelly Madden she had a pretty good showing. She got some offense in there for the amount of time that they had. So she got a great look. And obviously she, comes from a trainer that knows what he's doing. I absolutely love Deonna Purrazzo. I've seen her in Impact multiple times live. She does great work. So, it's nice to see. It looks like we've got some more promising talent, young talent coming up in the women's division in ROH.
Next match here, we have Mike Bennett with Maria Kanellis-Bennett and Matt Taven in his corner, taking on Darius Martin, who's like, without his right hand at this point. So Darius Martin, I felt like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dante Martin felt like he was more equipped to be independent as a singles wrestler. Darius Martin just feels like he's a tag wrestler without his partner. And no matter how they're trying to present him, it totally feels like, I don't know. There's something missing with him. Of course, you mentioned how he feels like he's a little bit behind the 8 ball as far as recovery goes. He has a little bit of ring rust on him. But during the entrance, the one bright spot about this match was Rick Abani did mention that Dante Martin's recovery is going faster than expected. So he should be returning to the ring much faster than we thought, which is awesome news because we thought potentially that could have been a career-ending injury with as devastating as it looked WrestleMania weekend. So I'm hoping that we see him very soon. But this match was okay. I mean, it was competitive. I was not a fan of the ending here being a DQ. And DQs are rare in both AEW and ROH, but their advancing story, what that story will be, not exactly sure, but it does involve, obviously, the tandem of Matt Taven and Mike Bennett, but we're also getting Action Andretti. My question to you, do we think Action Andretti is going to kind of take one half of Top Flight for this period of time, or they're going to do like this offshoot tag team with Andretti and Darius Martin? And if they are you okay with it?
Yeah, that's what it looks like they're going to do to me, and I'm 100% okay with it, man. I think they need to. I mean, no disrespect to Darius, but yeah, I don't think and some of it might be just the fact that he's got less reps coming off, an injury more recently than Dante, but I don't think he holds, at least from what I've seen from him so far, he doesn't seem like he holds his own very well as a singles competitor. I love what I've seen out of Action Andretti so far. I mean, nobody's ever going to forget that kid getting a win over Jericho in his first main event or first, Dynamite match in AEW. So, and I will say, yeah, I'm totally fine with it. It keeps Darius getting reps in, gives Action Andretti a platform to show himself on ROH, which I also think is a great place for him solo as well as a singles competitor. They had a backstage segment shortly after this where, there was a promo cut, kind of a tandem promo cut between Action Andretti and Darius. And I thought they both did great on the mic. I was actually really impressed with both guys, especially Darius. So, like I said, I just kind of threw him under the bus a little bit for not being able to hang on his own. But brother's good on the mic, and I'm excited to hear more from him in some promos moving forward. Because I mean, they've already built this storyline with this rift between the Kingdom and what was Top Flight. So throwing Action Andretti in the mix, I think, allows them to not have to deviate from that too much. They can continue adding on to that heat between these teams. Yeah, I think there's good TV to come from it.
Yeah, and the interesting part to me was that we had Darius about to get the win here, and over a guy like Mike Bennett. And I'm not sure how the hierarchy goes, but you mentioned the story's in place, and maybe they're just taking Action Andretti and putting him in place for Dante Martin in this spot. But it feels weird that Darius Martin was just inches away from getting the win for Mike Bennett before Matt Taven got involved. And the DQ, as we mentioned, got involved after, and the ref called for the bell immediately. And the Kingdom attacking Martin's ankle with Andretti coming out. I guess it's okay if you don't want to move away. And a lot of these guys are reliant on these programs. And with Darius and Dante both having their share of time away from each other, I think it's like, all right, we have to just do something with him. And Action Andretti, if he's not going to be using this JAS feud, if they kind of put that on ice for a little bit, why not use Action Andretti? It's good for him to have these reps and work with guys that are experienced, like a Bennett, like a Taven, and also be in the ring on a weekly basis. And I think it's not a bad thing at all. So it's all good all around. But I have to say, I do miss Dante Martin a lot, and I hope he comes back much, much sooner than we expected, like they're saying.
Yeah, definitely best news of the night to hear that surgery went well. So, yeah, hopefully all good vibes your way there, Dante. Hopefully we see you soon.
So the next match here, and then we were talking about this off air, but it was Tracy Williams taking on Wheeler Yuta in a non-title match. So they made sure to announce in the beginning of this match beginning, Riccaboni and Coleman, that Tracy Williams served as a mentor for Yuta as he came up through the independent scene. And these guys are super close. You could see just the ability for them to collaborate on the fly in the ring and have the ability to do things without speaking to each other. And I know that's easy to say here, but these guys completely felt like they had a good chemistry going forward. I'll let you take the lead on this match. You said you're really impressed with both Tracy Williams and Wheeler going in.
Yeah, man. I mean, I thought this match was great. I thought it was a good showing for both guys. And it was just a flurry of offense from both of them in the beginning. I mean, there's so much happened just in the first couple minutes of this match. Like I said, I think it's a really good story we're telling. You and I were talking off air of how Yuta has really come a long way in these last few months coming into his own. And he didn't do it by just getting being people putting him over. I mean, he took a lot of losses to people like Mox. I think it's really cool now seeing him, all these guys, like the announcers mentioned with Tracy Williams, kind of taking Yuta under his wing and them doing a lot on indies together, kind of seeing that Yuta's definitely on the level as these guys, as some of these guys that brought him up now, and not only on the level, but maybe even ahead of a few of them now. So yeah, it's been it's really, really cool to see that happen. But yeah, this match was high impact, a lot of action early on. Yuta took control by booting Williams in the face to break his submission. Yuta got Williams with a German suplex for hitting the hammer and anvil elbows to boos from the Rhode Island crowd. Yuta caught Williams in a deathlock and taunted him before bringing him back on the hold. Williams was able to grab the ropes, with the announcers noting that this was not a Pure Rules match. I mean, I would absolutely love to see Hot Sauce Tracy Williams go against Shibata in a pure match. I think that would be excellent. So yeah, hopefully we get to see that in the future. Williams gets he fires up a little bit here and makes a little bit of a comeback with strikes, hits a DDT onto the top turnbuckle before falling with a lariat. Brainbuster scored a near fall, which Williams immediately transitioned to a beautiful cross case. Yuta escaped from it, cut a forearm exchange by biting Williams on the forehead. So, seeing a little bit more of these heel tactics from Yuta that we've been seeing since the entire Blackpool Combat Club has kind of taken that darker turn. Yuta hit him a right angle slam and a hammer and anvil elbows before scoring the win with a seated dragon sleeper. I love the seated dragon sleeper. I think it's an incredible finisher. And man, Tracy did a great job selling it, man. He went out, but his leg was twitching. It was icing on the cake. Great match. Great finish.
It was funny when I was just talking about this match. It said it's non-title because I'm so used to Wheeler being the pure champion. He's just not anymore. So it's just interesting to me. But I agree. I think Wheeler has come into his own where he is not only the guy coming up anymore. He feels like he is the presence, no longer the future. And he's on par with all these guys. You mentioned Tracy Williams being a mentor to him and guys like Mox and Danielson. He's an equal in this group. and he's no longer this young protege, young boy coming up. And that was a recurring theme on the build to Supercard of Honor with Shibata. And I think eventually we're going to get this comeuppance with Shibata, and maybe Wheeler will get his win back, because I think so desperately it would do him wonders to get that win. We talk about how well he's been presented, but at this point, Shibata's owned him, and Shibata showed him who's boss. And want to talk about a squash match? That was an extended squash match where I think Wheeler had one strike in, and then Shibata absolutely demolished him. And that might just be protecting Shibata, wanting him on your card, because he's not bumping around at all. And of course, coming back from almost a death injury, where it wasn't just like career ending injury. It was a brain bleed where the guy could have died. So they're definitely being careful with them. But I think eventually we talk about getting back to Eddie Kingston and Claudio. I think we have to get back to Wheeler and Shibata. I don't think that story's done. And I'm personally very excited for it, because there's going to be some roadblocks in between. Side stories, of course, is the match we're going to talk about next. But also this story with Tracy Williams. I think, although Tracy Williams is not a mainstay on ROH, I think things like that, pulling back from Wheeler's past, pulling back from other guys in ROH's past, and tying it into here with the independents, so well done.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for chapter 2 of Shibata versus Wheeler. I think that the result of their first meeting is playing a big part in the fire that we're seeing to continue to see build in Wheeler Yuta. I hope the next time we see him, man, I don't care who wins. I want to see it. I would love to see, because we haven't seen one since Ring of Honor's come back. I would love to see it go as full 60-minute time limit and go to the judges. I think that'd be incredible.
Yeah, I think it would have to be, it's tough on pay-per-view because they're so limited, but I would love to see them have like a 3-match card. And we mentioned the tapings being challenging because of people's attention span. And that's why when I went on that rant last week, and I still stand by it, that having ROH's own tapings in own settings, like if you had that in, Harpo's in Detroit, or you have it in Melrose Ballroom in New York, people would go crazy for that type of stuff. And they wouldn't be exhausted by a full 5 hours of wrestling, Rampage AEW, and you would have the diehards or ROH that punch their ticket to get in the door to see the product, see Shibata, and not just be exposed to it by accident. And I understand production value. Maybe if ROH starts presenting themselves as this functional business standalone, not just feeding off of AEW, then you can move towards it. But that's just pie in the sky thinking for me. I think ROH has a future. And I'm not saying move backwards, because that's not what I'm saying. I think having small, intimate venues and have ROH's own production team away from these tapings, because I think the tapings hurt more than they help. I really do. I think the crowds and the lack of energy for some of these crowds definitely hurts. So, but we'll talk more about that.
And the spoilers alone too. Yeah, I think it would be great to see him go back to live, smaller venues.
So next match here, we have the tag match with the aforementioned, the pure champion, Shibata, teaming with Alex Coughlin, and they took on the workhorsemen, Anthony Henry and JD Drake. And, before we get into this match, it's awesome to see Shibata involved, not only on the big events, but on the weekly TV. And I know at this point, they're filming in bulk and all that stuff. So we're going to see a lot of Shibata, and I'm here for that. The fact that he's not just working big title matches, he's not a part-timer. He's involved on weekly TV on these build-up tag matches. And what a dream to be teaming with a guy like Alex Coughlin for me. I mean, Alex Coughlin, we talked about it off air. GCW Bloodsport, one of the highlights of the weekend. He, took on Moxley, no rope death match style, which kicked off the WrestleMania weekend, kind of stole the weekend. And Alex Coughlin held his own against a guy like Jon Moxley. And teaming with Shibata here, that's kind of a little dream team here. They definitely have a good chemistry. And this is one of the first times, I know you saw Coughlin at Wrestle Kingdom and you've been exposed to him, but seeing him in this ROH platform, what were your thoughts?
Dude, it was great. And I think it's just to continue to praise Ring of Honor's storytelling ability. Is like, that's how we got Shibata here, was Wheeler Yuta calling out the LA dojo, like calling out Clark Connors and then calling out Shibata. So what a cool opportunity to see him team with one of his dojo students in Coughlin. And man, yeah, Coughlin's got a great look. They went up against the Workhorsemen here. The first time we've seen the Workhorsemen in tag action. We've seen them in six-man tag action in ROH before. But man, I thought it was great. He's got a great look. He's got you can tell that him and Shibata have incredible chemistry, obviously from their training background together. But man, very impressed with this guy. Like I said, like you mentioned, Wrestle Kingdom was the first time I'd seen him. He definitely struck me there as well. But man, he's just shredded to bits. By no means is he a huge guy, but I would still consider him a body guy. He gives me very much like Rick Rude vibes, physically. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody go from a laying down seated position into like a standing vertical suplex. That was absolutely incredible. So I really hope that this is not, just a teaser, and this is going to be, because I know you said that Coughlin's pretty active in New Japan. I really hope that we continue to see more of him on Ring of Honor TV, because I think he's got a lot to offer the product.
And it feels like as we see these one-off people, and ROH is always based on, we talk about the independent scene and Chris Daniels really feeding into that. It feels like ROH is going to be more of that platform where AW Dark, AW Elevation does that, where they tap into the local market, people in the area, and then bring them on prominence. But I don't know if this is just me and we cover ROH so intimately that it feels this way, but there is a difference to me than when someone works AW Dark and when someone works ROH, and having the ability to be presented, because this is the main flagship for ROH, and it's different than working AW Dark, and they're both honors. To work with talent like on both rosters is it's an honor. But for me, when you have a guy like Coughlin working ROH, it feels different than having him working AW Dark. Does it feel the same way to you?
Oh yeah, it's apples and oranges to me, man. I mean, and I'm not, by no means am I shitting on Dark, but like, yeah, it's a step above. It's not a Ring of Honor is not a developmental league show, and Dark, for lack of a better term, is a developmental show. So yeah, I think I definitely think it gives a little bit more prominence when you see him on ROH Weekly TV. Yeah, I'm really hoping to, like I said, really hoping to see more of this kid. I think he's young, right? Is he in his mid 20s, early 20s?
I would say early 30s, Alex Coughlin. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think like we were mentioning earlier, Brian Cage, 38 is like the new prime for wrestlers, man. So this kid's got a lot more to offer, and I think a super promising career ahead of him.
Yeah, and we had the end of the match. They shot an angle for Coughlin challenging Shibata for the Pure Championship, but it wasn't done in the traditional way where Coughlin attacked him or he turned his back on him, but it was done through mutual respect. Like they teamed together. They were victorious against a formidable tag team with the Workhorsemen, Henry and Drake. They're not on the winning side of a lot of matches, but they put up a good fight. And I think after the match, they were, we talked about bond through combat and, forged in combat, like the Blackpool Combat Club is. Similar concept here, where the Pure Champion feels maybe a little bit indebted to Coughlin for being such a good partner to him. And I just like the way that story works, because it's not just traditional, point A to get to point B to have a match together. It feels a little bit more integrated. And do I think Coughlin's going to take the title off Shibata? Absolutely not. But I think it could lead to another good match, whether it happens next week or 2 weeks from now. It's leading towards something bigger with Shibata, which I think the Shibata story is Wheeler Yuta.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think that Coughlin's is going to take it off of him, but I guarantee it's not going to be an extended squash like the first meeting with Yuta and Shibata, where it's gonna be a banger, and Coughlin's gonna come out looking really good even without the belt.
So this next match here, it's too local to my area. Willow Nightingale from NYWC, Little Mean Kathleen, the reigning and defending remarkable women's champion. She will be defending her championship at Cream of the Crop, so I can't wait to be working with her. She was here, and I was so happy to see her working with Willow. And this was an extended squash, but we did get some Kathleen highlights here. And if you're not familiar with Little Mean Kathleen and everything she brings to the table, she's, to me, and I'm talking to other people, and this is not an official sort of whatever description of her, but she reminds me of Spike Dudley in the best way possible. She has all the different anecdotal behavior like a Spike Dudley, and I feel like that's a really big compliment. She's built from Flavortown, so love her. And Kathleen, from the beginning, bit Willow's hand, and
yeah,
hit the body slam. Kathleen fought out of the power slam, hit some bicycle kicks, got some offense in on Willow, but eventually Willow got the win with the Oklahoma Stampede for the quick victory after a splash in the corner. Quick match, but love it. I mean, I'm also partial because I love Little Mean Kathleen, and she is the remarkable women's champion for the promotion I work for. So awesome to see.
Dude, this is my first experience with Little Mean Kathleen, and as soon as I saw her and heard the name, I was like, "Oh my god, I love this! I love this girl. She's awesome." It's in the running for me for maybe top 10 best wrestling names ever. I absolutely love it. It rolls off the tongue. Love the alliteration, and yeah, man, that's an incredible compliment. Like, Spike Dudley is he's one of my favorites of all time. I absolutely love Spike Dudley, and I think that's I think of him very endearingly. And yeah, he's one of the toughest people to ever do it. Really made up for his size, and yeah, I think that's a great comparison. So yeah, that's awesome. You're lucky to work with her. She seems like a great talent. Maybe we'll get to see some more of her on ROH.
And if you're listed at Spike Dudley Energy at any given take, I mean, that's definitely a compliment. I feel like Spike Dudley, like we said, that run through ECW, such a huge fan, even the stuff he brought to WWE. So, and it's interesting too. You can definitely tell when someone shines through in an extended, it's just a squash match. It was quick. What was this, 2 minutes long? And she was able to shine. And it just shows the ability. And that's how you get asked back. And I think Little Mean Kathleen, any promotion, be lucky to have her. And then I would fully expect them to be calling her back to be involved in something next time they're in the area. So I look forward to seeing more of Little Mean Kathleen involved with ROH.
Yeah, same here.
Next match here, we have Stu Grayson taking on Tony Nese. So we get to see Mark Sterling and Tony Nese again. We have Evil Uno in the corner of Stu Grayson. To see the Dark Order affiliation on ROH TV, this was good. This was a competitive match. And Tony Nese, you want to talk about being shredded. This guy is absolutely cut from diamonds. This was a competitive match. Ultimately, Stu Grayson gets the win. Stu dropped him with a fireman's carry to a backbreaker to score the win. And Stu Grayson's been presented in a very good way. And Dark Order's under this rebuild at this point. Dark Order feels a little bit different than they were in the different era with the Brody Lee, and even go back to the original AEW. They're trying to reestablish what they are, maybe distance themselves a little bit from Hangman Page. I do enjoy it. I love the edge with Evil Uno. I think that kind of started with the Moxley match where he had a little bit more of an edge to him, where he bled through his mask. Point being, I thought Stu Grayson looked good here. I like seeing them on ROH, and this was a good, solid match.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And honestly, I thought Nese was going to get the win here when I first saw this on the card, and really excited to see Stu Grayson get the win. I thought it was a solid match. These guys are a fun pair. I hope to see these guys wrestle again for sure. But I'm right there with you. I think, I thought the Dark Order storyline was kind of, for lack of a better word, mishandled a little bit on AEW TV. I think it's a good idea to see them get a little separation, not a complete break from Hangman Adam Page. I think there's, nothing wrong. I kind of think of their relationship with Adam Page the same way that I think of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in WWE. Like, as much of a feel-good moment as it was at WrestleMania to see them get the titles, I don't want to see them as a tag team. I think that it's cool to see their paths cross every once in a while, but I have a lot more respect for those guys separately and enjoy them a lot more separately. So I think there's a lot more meat on the bone for Dark Order in Ring of Honor, and seeing that separation with Hangman, especially since it looks like Hangman might be realigning with the Elite. So, still unsure where that's going to hash out. But yeah, excited. I think Dark Order's definitely got a place in Ring of Honor, and excited to see it. After the match, Righteous, Dutch and Vincent come back out, came on stage and stared down Dark Order for the second week in a row for sure.
Yep.
Man, excited to see these guys. And they definitely focused solely on Grayson, it seemed like, and they had a little backstage promo, which was cool. I'm really glad to see the Righteous back, and they kind of insinuated that the Dark Order left Stu Grayson behind during his hiatus from AEW, and that they want to help him out. That's not the angle that I thought they were going to go, and I really like it. I think that's adds an interesting layer to their re-entry into ROH TV, and also this kind of courtship of trying to get Stu Grayson kind of to come join them and their little cult vibe that they have going on. It makes for an interesting story. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, Manson family energy with the Righteous, and everyone talks about Jay White as the free agent that got away, but I feel like the Righteous was a missed opportunity for WWE letting them go. And of course, they're not going to be main eventing WrestleMania, but I thought they would be really good depth pieces for the Bray Wyatt story, whatever they wanted to do. They fit the aesthetic that, for me, was the best version of Bray Wyatt, and I thought they fit perfectly into what WWE was going for before they dropped everything and Bray Wyatt got hurt or whatever they're dealing with. But Bray Wyatt's storyline seems to be on the back burner at this point. But with WWE's losses, AW/ROH's gain, and I think the Righteous is a perfect fit. And they're a nice little bridge from the old ROH to the new ROH. And they were involved in the old ROH. Of course, last year they were I think they were on Death Before Dishonor. Yeah, they were at Death Before Dishonor last year before leaving and becoming free agents. Very, as you mentioned, cultish. I would just say, maybe take a little bit of risk here. Have Stu Grayson, who feels a little bit slighted by Dark Order with Stu Grayson's absence. And we saw, and I understand it was in his hometown of Canada, but have Stu Grayson leave. Have him join. I think having Stu Grayson join the Righteous could be more interesting than have him just do the status quo legacy act with Dark Order. I mean, take a risk here. I think Stu Grayson could fit really well with the Righteous.
I completely agree. And, you could do it you could go at it from multiple angles. You could have Stu Grayson join up with them. You could have him, just kind of meet with them and then kind of go like a brainwash angle with him. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And I'm excited to see the Righteous land back in ROH. I think it's cool to see them home. I think it's right where they belong. And I agree with you. I thought that there was some cool opportunity there for maybe them to team up with Bray and WWE. But I would also, I enjoy the Righteous so much. I'm happy to know that like WWE is not going to get the opportunity to mishandle them. And I think they're just going to be exactly what they need to be here at Ring of Honor.
I guess the Righteous can drink Mountain Dew on their own time. So we have the ROH Women's World Title Proving Ground match. And these are essentially, if you guys are not familiar with Proving Ground matches, they are essentially contenders matches. Same way they do it in AEW, where if you beat the champion or last the time limit, you get a title shot in the future. And this was Ashley D'Amboise. That's how you pronounce her name. I looked it up before we did this because I think the announcers were saying it wrong. I think they weren't saying the S at the end. Either way, showcase for Athena. Athena wasn't losing this match. Athena went to the top rope, got the O-face. There's a lot of in between there. There was some offense given for Ashley here. And I think that was very, very notable. But at the end of the day, Athena is on a dominant run. We talk about from week to week. She's the most dominant woman in wrestling right now. And I think she's the highlight to me of the women's division in ROH, and she deserves the championship belt. And I do not want to see this title reign end until it's ready. And I don't think it's ready yet.
No, I don't think so either, man. I don't think it's coming off of her anytime soon. Decent showing for Ashley, but incredible showing for Athena as always. She's once again dead eye locked in with the hard cam during the cover for the pin. I absolutely love that. She's got crazy eyes, man. She's got that wild, unhinged look on her face. I'm eating it up by the spoonful, man. Everything they give us from her. I thought it was really good. Transitioning into a backstage segment where Lexi Nair's interviewing Ashley, and Ashley kind of takes a nice little shot at Athena there and said, I expected there to be more honor here. It was a lot more anger than honor. And she doesn't get more than, as soon as she gets that word, that little hit at Athena out of her mouth, Athena is right there and just, clocks her one. Goes after Lexi as if, Lexi's holding the booking pin here and is telling her, like, this is the trash that you guys give me. Like, if you guys don't start giving me better opponents, you're going to be next. Throws the women's belt on top of her road case and smashes Ashley's face into it. I'm loving this continuation of this unhinged side of Athena that we're seeing. And like, it does, man. Every time that she goes back there and gets in Lexi Nair's face, like it raises my blood pressure a little bit. It really gets me as a fan. And it's really good shit, man.
So after this, we had the main event here. And as we mentioned, this match got started around 8:13 Eastern, if you're watching this live. So we knew this wasn't going the full 2 hours. So I would say all told, this whole event went 1.5 hours, 140 for being generous. And somehow, some way, the ROH World Title was on the line against METALIK. I'm not sure how METALIK earned a shot, but Claudio Castagnoli was defending against METALIK, and I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams ever thought METALIK could ever win the title. This was just there for me. I don't think it was must-see. I don't think it had any sort of mustard on it because of the foregone conclusion of a guy like METALIK taking the title off Claudio, and that's no disrespect to METALIK because I like what he's done since being ROH. He's just not on par with Claudio as far as presentation. This was Claudio's sixth defense, believe it or not. So he is a defending champion. METALIK was, on the defensive most of this match. He was jumping all over the ropes and trying to escape all Claudio's offense. So they're trying to tell that story. And then they go into the catch can wrestling with METALIK fighting out of a wrist lock. And he did catch Claudio for a small package for a near fall, I guess you can say it. It was like 2.14. So no one thought it was going to be a 3. This match was really lacking was drama because, like I mentioned before, there was not one piece of me that I could suspend belief that Claudio was ever losing this match and that we're going to have METALIK as the ROH champion. And not that it ever should have happened, which puts in the place where, why is this not just a proving ground match? And yeah, again, match was just there. I mean, we got Claudio hitting the hammer and anvil elbows and then the neutralizer for the win. That's the foregone conclusion. We did see some highlights though. METALIK did show out a bit, doing the rope walk, elbow drop. He was all over the place. And we talk about Commander, we talk about Vikingo, but Metalik, he's a pretty good lucha as well. I wouldn't say he's the best in the world, and I think the bar has been raised so high at this point, but let's not dismiss what Metalik brings to the ring, and I think he has the ability to kind of showcase himself, and that's the one silver lining of this match. It wasn't a main event spot, and of course, maybe he's not deserving of a world title, but doesn't mean that he didn't take the opportunity and run with it, but Claudio gets the win, and well-deserved.
Yeah, most definitely, man. I'm like, no disrespect to Metalik whatsoever, but that's the first note I have on this match is why is Metalik getting this title shot? You know, Athena had a proving ground match tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's only the second or third proving ground match we've seen since Ring of Honor TV's come back, since the new era started. I'm a huge fan of proving ground matches, and I'd like to see more of them, and I think this would have been much more appropriate presented as a proving ground match. But, and you know, like you said, I mean, it was just kind of there, but there was some cool shit in it. I think just the clash of styles between, you know, wrestling styles between Claudio and Metalik makes for, you know, an interesting enough match. But yeah, just kind of there. I mean, it's definitely, you know, spoiler alert, definitely not getting top honors for me this week. You know, not the biggest, not the most interesting main event that we've seen. But it, you know, I think it served its purpose to show that Claudio is a force to be reckoned with, and nobody's going to be taking this title off of him anytime soon. So,
agreed. Yeah, and I think we'll get to it in top honors about my favorite part, but this to me was far and away the most lackluster episode of ROH that we've reviewed so far, and inconspicuous by their absence. Aussie Open not being on the card, the new IWGP Tag Team Champions not being there felt like they were a big missing hole for what was there. And if you replace any of the other matches with an Aussie Open match, I think it takes it to the next level. And that speaks to what Aussie Open has meant to ROH the first, 7 weeks of TV. So we'll talk about it in 1 sec. Let's get to top honors and talk about our favorite match or segment of the week. All right, top honors. Colton, you tell me what your favorite part of this ROH TV taping was.
Man, I'm probably going to have to go Yuta versus Tracy Williams. I loved this match. I thought it was excellent. You know, I really, really enjoyed the showing from both guys. Like I said, continues to develop great storytelling for Yuta and his rise as being on par with the guys that brought him up and being a real threat and contender and being one of the top pro wrestlers in the game doing it today. Also, like I said, great showcase for Tracy Williams. Love seeing more of him on Ring of Honor TV. And yeah, just that Standing Dragon Sleeper for the finish alone, man, just did it for me. I thought it was a perfect match. Really, really enjoyed it. My favorite one on the card tonight.
I agree with that. Great match. I'm going to go with Shibata and COUGHLIN teaming up together and having a spotlight on the card. My runner-up will be Little Mean Kathleen, the remarkable women's champion. I just love seeing her on the show. And if for anyone that's watching, if you want to make the maximum amount of time out of your short period of time on TV, it could be a short squash match, but you can make yourself memorable. Take a page out of Little Mean Kathleen's book because you remember her leaving this match, and she was working with Willow, and both of them are just the balls of energy that feel like they're magnetic. We talk about Willow being magnetic, but Little Mean Kathleen has that as well. And I think they both have, this is the future of the women's division. We talked about Sky Blue. We talked about all these other wrestlers in this women's division, Athena being top dog, but I think you can really build a very deep women's division that could challenge any promotions. And it starts right here with these two women, with Willow and also Little Mean Kathleen. So I agree with you. It was definitely a good match. I wanted to pick the Wheeler match, but I knew you would, so I wanted to at least be a little bit different for conversation. But with that being said, let's get into honorable mentions, and I'm going to tell you another match that I think we should review. All right, so every week in alignment with the history of ROH, I will recommend one match for Colton to check out. Last week, I had given you an assignment. Break down the match I assigned you, and what did you think of it?
Man, so you gave me Austin Aries as Ring of Honor heavyweight champion versus CM Punk at Death Before Dishonor 3, which was in 2005. Show was in New Jersey. Man, this was a great match. Once again, you never disappoint with the recommendations, Ace. This was a really good, this is during Punk's on his way out here. The crowd is super hot for this match. And just unmistakably, even as the champion, man, Aries is the heel here, man. Like, he's just getting anything he does, even before the match starts, and what little offense he got in the first 10 minutes, like, he's just getting like huge loud boos from the crowd. Like, they want Punk to win here. It is unmistakable. But I think is a nice setup. Story wise coming into this, they mentioned Aries is coming off a neck injury, with a feud with Joe, continuing to sell the devastating nature of the Muscle Buster as a finisher. And, like we mentioned, it's 2005. Punk's on his way out. We all know he's heading to WWE before too long here. Definitely a slow pace to start. And Punk definitely targets the neck of Austin Aries immediately. Punk gets Austin Aries early on in a head scissors, and Austin Aries tries to bump out of it. Punk slaps him right back in between his knees, gets him up, puts Austin Aries into a headstand. He doesn't even realize he's in one, and then Punk drop kicks him. I absolutely love that move. I'd never seen anything like it. It was really, really cool. Majority of the first 10 minutes of the match, Austin Aries is in a headlock. Like, he gets next to no offense in whatsoever. A few minutes later, though, Aries hits a Death Valley driver on the apron that definitely changed the temperature in the match. Also, we'll say we saw Mike Bennett do the exact same move to Darius Martin tonight, which was pretty cool. Because I sometimes I'll watch these recommendation matches earlier in the week, but tonight, the way my schedule worked, I watched it right before it aired, before Ring of Honor aired. So I was like, oh man, it was nice and fresh in my mind. Aries definitely got his shit in. He hit a pretty brutal pile driver on Punk that I thought for a minute that it might be over. But as I mentioned, man, like, the crowd was not giving Aries any props. Anytime he hit any offense on Punk, man, it was some deep, deep boos. I thought Punk had it when he first hit that first Shining Wizard, but Aries just, man, he does a great job of feeding a comeback. He kicked right back out of it. Aries went for the 450 splash about 3 different times, finally hits it on his 4th attempt. Punk still kicks out of it, man. And then Punk's got a nice little flurry for the win here. TKO into a Shining Wizard, into a Pepsi plunge for the win. Great shit. Awesome finish. Crowd goes absolutely wild, man. Interesting little exchange with Aries and Punk at the end. Aries walks over there with the belt. You can tell that he's disappointed. Hands it to Punk, and when Punk first goes to take it, he doesn't let it go. And you're like, oh, shit, what's going to happen here? But ultimately, in the end, raises Punk's arm, gives him the respect that he deserves. Thought it was a cool moment. Wanted to ask you, so after Punk wins the title here, this is, I believe, is this July of 2005 at this point?
Yeah.
How much longer was he with? I mean, we all know he's on the way out here, but how much longer was it before he walked away from ROH TV?
It's not really that long. Everyone remembers Summer of Punk is this long standing thing, but it was only, I think, 2 months of Summer of Punk. So he is signed, all intents and purposes, going over to WWE. It was pre NXT. So he was going to FCW, getting ready for ECW, that kind of thing. And that was probably about 46 days all told, but he defended the title. And every time he went to a town, everybody thought he was losing it there, but he never quite lost it until he lost it to James Gibson, which was the end of Summer of Punk. But it was him threatening to take the title over to WWE with him. It was like, classic, almost what he was doing in WWE. He rewrote that in WWE when he was wrestling John Cena, saying he was going to take the WWE title, New Japan, to ROH, and maybe they'll redo that in AEW. That was the thought when he won the title. Everyone was talking about Summer of Punk. They were going to do the exact same storyline where he would threaten to take the AEW title elsewhere as a heel, but they never quite got there because he got hurt.
Yeah, but man, yeah, very cool, exciting time for wrestling, and especially for CM Punk fans. I mean, like, CM Punk fans, I mean, you could feel the crowd was absolutely electric here. Really, really cool moment because, even though he'd spent a decent amount of time in Ring of Honor at this point, hadn't gotten, I don't think is this the first time he had won the belt in Ring of Honor?
Yes, it was the first time. So everyone was excited, thinking he would just go out as a forever champion and relinquish the title. But no, he went out there and a belligerent dick to everybody as the heel champion. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Excellent, man. Yeah, great match. If you haven't seen it, absolutely go watch it. I mean, Austin Aries, definitely a guy that's got some dirty laundry outside of the ring, but his in-ring work's pretty solid. And this was a good match all around.
So let's get into the match I recommend now, and it's going to be Best in the World 2021. This is on the tail end of Ring of Honor as it's on its dying deathbed here. And it was the presentation of two guys that are under the AEW umbrella right now. It's Bandito and the ROH reigning champion Roosh going after each other for the ROH World Heavyweight Championship at Best in the World. And this is when I talk about Roosh as being a main eventer. This is the presentation of him as a top guy. Same thing with Bandito. This was certainly it was a distinct error of ROH, but I think this was the best presentation of both Roosh and Bandito when they can show they can be top guys. And Bandito has been absent from AEW television, but as he's not been utilized, Roosh has been sort of mid-card, lower mid-card guy. But if you want to see a match where two guys go at it, where they give it their all and they are presented as the biggest top stars in the company, this is the match for you. So Bandito, Roosh, Best in the World 2021, not that old.
Hell yeah, super stoked about this one, man. You had me at Bandito, and Roosh, man, just makes it even better. Like you said, he's been presented as, kind of mid-card, especially in the tag division, only really exclusively with his brother Dralistico. But, man, when Roosh walks out, especially at an ROH show, the crowd lets you know that in their mind and in their hearts, he's 100% a top guy still and always will be.
All right, well, that's it. Let's get to the final handshakes, preview next week, and say goodbye, get you prepared for the rest of the week on the Tavern. All right, final wrap-up of the show. Next week's show will be next week, believe it or not, 4/20, Thursday night. We're going to be reviewing ROH TV. The spoilers are out there, but do yourself a favor. Do not read them. Stay with us. Go over the live event. Watch it live. Support ROH with the app. We'll be talking about the latest news in ROH, getting you guys caught up. And we're going to tie in some history with some matches you check out. We'll obviously tie it in with what's going on. And maybe there'll be some CM Punk news to break down and how that works in with Ring of Honor. Who knows? I mean, he has a lineage to ROH, so you never know where he's going to show up. But that being said, Colton, get your shit in. What's going on at Mullet.mania?
Man, Mullet.mania, be on the lookout for some fresh mullet photos on there. I'm entering the Mullet Championship USA competition coming up here in September. So got myself a new pair of camo overalls and a fresh cut. So got some new photos for you guys to check out coming up there soon. But, like always, man, go to the turnbuckletavern.com. Like, subscribe, follow us on any and all platforms out there, Instagram, Apple and Spotify podcast, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere you can find us. Go to Pro Wrestling Tees, grab some shirts. As we mentioned, they're bringing some old designs down. Chad was saying he's not 100% sure which ones are coming down yet, but get on there and get what you can. Instagram for the Tavern is blowing up, man. We broke 6,100 followers today. That's huge. So big shout out. Thank you guys so much for digging what we're doing and subscribing and following us. It's really exciting to see it grow. I mean, I feel like 2 months ago, we were just over 3,000 followers on the Tavern on Instagram. So it's really huge. It's exciting shit.
Absolutely agree. Go and support everything on Turnbuckle Tavern. Every show, we got you covered for 6 nights a week of content. And tomorrow night, stay tuned with myself and Mike Belcast returning for Shot Nostalgia. We talk about King of the Ring 1998, where Mick Foley takes that dive off Hell in a Cell and takes the dive through Hell in a Cell and all the fallout of the event. And then also the 2 Raws following that, where we have Kane winning the title for one night and all the chaos that ensued with that. And man, it's awesome. And we have obviously X-Pac in the ring, and we also have Ken Shamrock winning the King of the Ring. And we get the start of Val Venus, Choppy Your Pee-Pee with Kai and Ty. There's a whole bunch of shit to break down. And of course, the newsletter is not going to disappoint. So going through the weeds and talking about what's going on outside of WWF at the same time, it's fascinating. So we're about halfway through 1998. Looking forward to our next season of Shot Nostalgia, but not looking too far ahead because we're about in the summer months of WWF 1998, which is my sweet spot, man. SummerSlam 1998, MSG, Highway to Hell, Rock versus Triple H in a ladder match for the IC title. Man, yeah, you can't get better than that.
No, doesn't get much better than that.
All right, well, that's all we got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, we'll see you guys next week for another edition of the Honor Society. As always, abide by the code of honor. We'll catch you guys next week.